Welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
For this is what the Sovereign Lord says.
Why do you need prophets to tell people who you are and what you want?
If you can justify everything that the God of the Bible has done, then you can justify any of your behavior.
A lot of this mentality is trickling into what is now mainstream right-wing Christianity.
I am capable of empathy greater than this God of the Bible.
This is a Bible that they tell kids. This is the good Lord. This is the good book. He is fantasizing about murder, mass murder.
Head over to sacrilegiousdiscourse.com right now to find out how to leave us a review or support us on Patreon.
Hey there, sinners and saints. It's your favorite Bible-bashing duo from Sacrilegious Discourse, and we need your help.
That's right, folks. We're raising funds for some heavenly equipment and a studio that doesn't sound like it's in the depths of hell.
Our current setup, let's just say it's more apocalypse than audiophile.
So if you want to hear us dissect the Bible without the background noise of demonic squirrels, chip in a few bucks.
We're aiming for $5,000 to upgrade our audio and build a studio worthy of blasphemous banter.
Donate today and help us spread the good word of atheism.
You can find a link right on our homepage, sacrilegiousdiscourse.com. Every dollar counts.
Even if it's from your collection plate. Husband!
Wife!
Do you know what we're doing today?
We're doing like a special of a special of a special.
I mean, it ain't that special.
It's our first live Sunday. Are you kidding me? We're on Discord. We're live on a Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, but the topic is not that special.
But this is fucking special.
I mean, I guess if you're Greek, you might find it special.
It's all Greek to me.
I actually have that in my notes.
I took it from you.
You did. You stole it. Yeah, it's Greece, baby.
Yeah, I think we're gonna, because we've been talking about Greece a little bit lately.
We have, and I was getting confused because I know Greece is like great and stuff.
Right.
And like, I didn't know what time periods everything was happening, like with regard to like, where are we at with the Bible versus the real world?
I mean, I could say
I said the real world.
I've been confused about time frames pretty much throughout the whole Old Testament. It's not real, like they bounce all over the place back and forth. And then, you know, sometimes they don't even, the Bible doesn't even know where the fuck they are. Right. They're just like, I'm here. God's just saying something. And,
somebody's in some desert somewhere.
But, you know, Greece entered the picture and I'm like, okay, what's, you know, because of the Septuagint and, you know, all the things. And I'm curious. So
I know. And like, we're always saying, you know, the Septuagint, the Greek translation. And I was like, wait, was that written yet? When was that?
And I think we've decided that we're doing these Sunday ones because they're kind of a once a month deal. And we're going to try to make it more biblically oriented because a lot of the people that we talk to that are overseas that wanted us to do these lives,
they can't make it on our late night Sunday because being overseas, they are like middle of the night for them.
Well, and more than that, you know, America sucks. And our politics suck.
Right.
And we tend to go into politics sometimes.
We do.
But they don't need to hear about our politics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's fair.
So we're going to keep it biblical on these once a months as far as like deep dives and things like that.
Yeah.
And this is our first live Discord Sunday special.
Yeah. It's Greece, baby. All right. It's Greece, baby.
All right.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready for this.
Yeah. Okay. So with regard to where we're at, right? We were doing the Babylonian exile, and now we're out of the Babylonian exile.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
We're coming back home. You know, we've got all these prophets talking about shit.
Yeah.
And they're like, let's bring it all back together now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that I felt was a really good time to pick up with, wait, what's happening? Where's Greece?
Historical context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what's going on in the fucking world right now?
Right.
Why are we all of a sudden hearing about Greece when we haven't gave a shit the whole fucking Bible so far?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So I thought I would put this in context by centuries. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to buzz through some centuries, like 100 years will go by in like 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're going to start in the 500 BCEs.
Okay. Yeah.
So we've got in 539-ish, and all of these are like circa, a roundabout.
Sure.
Or like-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like they had Google Calendar and like we can just track it back to that specific date and time.
If I ever say a hard date, understand, like this is my caveat. Understand that has an asterisk in that there's a C before it. Sure. Circa, a roundabout. Okay.
It would have been a lot easier for God to just RSVP people through like Google Calendar, though.
I know.
If he would have just had them invent that back then,
that would have been epic.
He could have got them all, into the Babylonian exile real efficiently. They would have known what time to leave and, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, stop. You go too far. All right, so I'm going to start at 539 BCE. Okay?
Yeah.
That's when Cyrus the Great of Persia conquered Babylon. Okay, so Persia now rules the former Babylonian territories. Okay, so I went back in time a little bit.
Sure.
Okay,
but this is after the Babylonian exile stuff.
No. We're not quite there yet.
You said Cyrus the Great, right?
Yeah, not Alexander and not just hang on. Listen.
Okay.
Follow me. Okay.
All right, I'm following.
So Cyrus the Great of Persia conquers Babylon. Persia now rules the former Babylonian territories, including Judah. Okay. Now, Greece at this time is still a scattered set of independent city-states, not yet an empire. And we're about to learn about big names like Athens, Sparta, Corinth. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So, Cyrus in 538 BCE.
Just for the record, this is after the Babylonian exile.
Hang on.
No, you said it wasn't.
Okay. So. Can you wait?
Okay.
539 is when Cyrus conquers Babylon, okay?
Yeah.
When he takes over, then in 538 BCE, he issues the edict allowing the Jews to return home, and that's the end of the Babylonian exile.
Okay, that's the end. I just wanted it started before that, though. That's why I was getting at that.
Right, but I was like trying to explain to you, and you were like not.
I want to make sure.
But that's why I'm saying, hold on. I see you. I hear you.
All right.
Just follow me.
Got it.
Okay. Follow me.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
So 538-ish BCE.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, Jews, you can go home now. So it's the end of the Babylonian exile. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the start of the post-exilic period in Judah. And that's when Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, and Zechariah are running around going, dur, 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 dur.
Yeah.
Let's get it back together, guys.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what? It feels like they were a little bit more, the imagery is a lot more vivid with regard to these crazy premonitions and visions and what have you after the Babylonian exile.
Yes.
I wonder if they were just exposed to a lot of like weed brownies in Babylon. They
were exposed to a lot more stuff than their predecessors. They were exposed to so many more ideas and religions and cultures and just all kinds of stuff. And so these quote unquote prophets were worried that they were losing their source that pulled them together.
Okay.
So they were making these prophecies both to give them something to hope for together as a group, and also to scare them back together as a group.
So they kind of viewed that the religion was backed into a corner and they're fighting for everything they can to bring it back.
Yeah. They're like, don't forget your roots. Don't forget who you are. We're one people. We've been scattered, but we're one.
Right.
And so it was very important to these prophets who were like raised in the religion and, tasked with these jobs to keep their people together.
Sure.
And to give them a reason to want to be together. Because, Cyrus ain't so bad and they've got houses and shit.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And
could be worse. It could be, what were those guys that were like,
the Assyrians.
The Assyrians. They were terrible.
They were terrible.
At least they didn't conquer them.
Right. But the ones in Babylon, like a lot of them had nice houses, education. Some even had like decent positions. They had slaves to do work for them. Like they didn't have it. Not all of them had it so bad.
Right. And if your life's going, all right. There's not a huge impetus to like uproot that.
Yeah.
So they're pitching hard.
They're pitching hard
to get their community and their people back together.
And if you can't get them excited, the only thing that works better than excitement is fear.
We know that all too well.
We do know that all too well.
Right? Yeah.
And so that's what they did. So then in the 530 to 480 BCEs, okay? During this time period, this is like a 50-year time period, okay? That gaps the 500 to 400 changeover.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We've got the rise of the Persian Empire because, Cyrus is ruling that now.
Yeah.
So Persia rules Judah as a province. Meanwhile, Greece is undergoing one of the most transformative and influential periods in world history.
Okay.
At the same time. Okay.
Yeah.
So at this time, Greece is still divided. It's not yet a unified country. It's a collection of city-states like Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these city-states are often switching alliances and at war with each other. They're like brother and sister. They're like siblings. They're always fighting with each other, but they will team up for a common enemy.
Right. Remember Sparta.
Remember Sparta. Exactly.
Or this is Sparta. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Each city-state has its own government systems and cultures. Okay, so they are very much separate, even though they are together.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was like starting in 530. Okay, so 520 to 518 BCE. That is when Zechariah was the most active as a prophet.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
He was warning his people during a time when two cultural superpowers, Persia and the budding Greece.
Yeah.
Greece, baby. We're about to massively collide.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he saw all this coming. That's why he was fire and brimstone, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. Okay. So that gives a little bit more context to why he was freaking the fuck out.
Sure.
Okay?
No, I mean, like, that was some serious shit going on over there.
And I did not realize, like, we kind of had a sense there must be a lot of other things happening. Yeah, there was.
Right.
And this is what it is.
But it's interesting hearing about it. Like, we're reading this from the Israelites perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of outside of the box of that whole thing that's going on between Greece and Persia, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's something that's in their zeitgeist, but they don't really understand. Like, it's not directly affecting them. So it's just kind of over there. And it affects how they think about the world in general, but it doesn't. Like, it's not directly affecting them right that moment in their life. So it's more of so it comes through in prophecies. It comes through in, like, if this thing happens over there, we might be fucked later. So beware, and our God needs to take care of it.
It's not as over there far away as you might think.
Okay.
Because a lot of the trade routes and stuff are bringing stories and are bringing the religions.
Sure.
And are bringing the thought processes.
Right.
And we're going to see that happen even after Zechariah's time, because I'm going to go past Zechariah a bit. Okay.
Sure.
Obviously, he doesn't live for like 500 years.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So it's not as over there-ish as you might think.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So we're moving out of the 500s. Okay. So we've got 500 BCE is when the classical period begins. And that is a huge overarching period that stretches from 500 BCE around about to 323 BCE.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all the 400s and over half of the 300 BCEs.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 400s was a fucking amazing time in Greece. Okay. It was a good time to be alive in Greece.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
So that's
this is where we hear all the Greece, the story about Greece, and, things that were going on.
All the stuff was in 400s BCE.
That's history for you. All the stuff.
That's
all you need to know.
I mean,
all the stuff.
Literally, like, I'm going to get into it and give you some dates, and it's amazing how much happened in just this one century.
Right.
Okay. Like, I would only compare it to the maybe advent of cell phone technology in the like 1900s, and watching how that one century, we started out with no cell phones. And then by the end of the 1900s, we had like, cell phones and computers and we walked on the moon. Like by the end of the 1900s, right? Like that one stretch of time
was huge.
Technology just went from 0 to 100 miles an hour.
Right.
And that's what was happening in Greece.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to kind of put it in context a little, when you think about 100-year stretch, that's what it looks like.
Got it.
Okay. So this era is considered the high point of Greek culture. We've got philosophy, drama, art, science, and democracy all flourishing.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The Greeks don't have an empire yet, but the seeds are there.
Okay. All right.
So in 490 BCE, that's the start of the Persian Wars. You know, Cyrus the Great.
Yeah.
He's not doing as great. Okay. So the Persian Wars helped forge a collective Greek identity.
Do you think they changed his name to Cyrus the Meh?
The Mid. Well, remember I told you that like these city-states, like they were like siblings, that they would fight amongst themselves, but they would like come together for a common enemy.
Sure. Yeah.
Kind of like what's happening in Canada right now. Like Canada is kind of dispersed. Like they have different language pockets in Canada.
Yeah.
Like Quebec is more French, and like other parts of Canada are not so much, right?
Sure.
And like they didn't really have like a combined patriotism, but then like America was like, I'm gonna make you the 51st state. And now Canada is like, bitch, elbows up, love Canada. Canadians have come together, and they were like, don't even a little bit. Like there is nothing like a common enemy to suddenly make a surge in patriotism. And that's what happened in Greece. Okay?
Got it. I just, when you said it's like Canada, I'm like imagining them warring between, you know, Alberta and Quebec,
they weren't
and
warring, but they
Ontario, and I'm like, wow, what's going on up there? I missed something.
They weren't warring, but they did like have a lot of the same, more laid back, but a lot of the same conservative versus progressive ideas that we did. Like they did have those issues up there.
Sure.
We didn't hear about them because they weren't to us as big a deal. Because ours were like in your fucking face with red hats.
Yeah, it was a completely different version than what the U.S. is dealing with.
Right.
But yes.
But for them, it was a big deal.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
I mean, the fact that they don't agree on stuff is like Canadians disagree with each
I guess
other.
I missed a beat when we went from comparing, you know, things like Sparta fighting people to Canada.
But I
lost
Sparta.
The thread there.
You're talking about Sparta. I'm not talking about
Sparta. Well, that's what was in my head.
No,
you know?
I'm talking about various city-states that are like siblings.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
They don't always agree on everything. And sometimes, like, in the case of Greece, they fight amongst themselves. Now, yes, in Canada, they don't fight amongst themselves. They merely say, hey, what? Okay? But they come together for a common enemy.
Sure.
I'm also trying to, like, draw parallels so that people can kind of get a sense of, like, comparison.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So, anyway, combined forces for one single enemy.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, we've got a collective Greek identity all of a sudden because they're like, fuck those Persians.
Right.
They're not getting us.
Yeah.
Okay? So, this set the stage for the Athens Golden Age.
Okay.
Okay? Persia, don't forget, that's the same empire ruling Judah, tries to conquer Greece. And Greece is like, not even a little bit.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So this is 490 BCE. We get the Battle of Marathon, which, not the Marathon gas station.
Right.
Right.
Or the one you run.
Not the marathon that is a race.
Right.
Not that one. No. But Athens, there's your Athens, okay?
Yeah.
Defeats a much larger Persian force.
Okay.
And they're like, fuck yeah, we did.
Was this the bit that we saw in the movie?
No.
300?
No.
No.
No. That is coming up. Okay.
Okay.
That is Athens, not Sparta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. So in 480 to 479 BCE, so 10 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got the Battle of Thermopylae, and that's 300 Spartans and allies heroically resist Xerxes' army.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Battle of Salamis.
Salami? Sure.
That's when the Athenian navy delivers a crushing blow to Persia.
That's really weird to think of a navy modern era. Like I don't hardly even think of people having boats back then, but they were fighting on the water even back.
They sure as fuck were.
That's
and
crazy.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like all of the Homerian epics.
Yeah. No, they had boats, but they didn't have fucking cannons, did they? I mean, like, what you just like jumping from one ship to the other? You swimming over to like, poke holes in their bow or what?
They had gods and goddesses.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Magic. They just tossed magic from from one ship to the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Spartans beat the Persians. Now the Athenian navy beats the Persians.
The Persians aren't having a good day down there.
They are not having a fucking good day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's after the Persians got beat in Marathon by the Athenians.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not doing good. Okay. Greek influence floods near the ancient Near East.
Okay? As it would. Because
they're kicking ass.
If you're beating those assholes into the ground, they're like, oh, these guys obviously got some power, so we
their God is good.
They're doing all right.
Including Judea. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the people in and around Judea are increasingly exposed to all these international ideas via trade and via all of the war stories, like what's happening? Have you heard about my uncle and blah, blah, blah?
Right.
Okay. Zechariah was writing during this rising Greek arc. Okay. So it's coming up.
Yeah.
And he's like, fuck those fucking Greeks.
Well, and maybe more importantly, the part that we're getting into now that happens later was during that Greek arc, probably. Mm-hmm. I mean, that we don't know exactly, but it was definitely written after the Zechariah time frame. So
yeah. So then we've got 460 to 430 BCE. Okay, and so after those Persian Wars, this is when Greece enters its golden age. Okay, this 30-year period is the golden age.
Because they came together for war and then they stayed together because, defense.
Because they beat that ass.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we've got philosophy, drama, art, science, and democracy.
Yay!
Okay? Yeah. So while the returning exiles...
We could use some of that.
Yeah, we could. While the returning exiles were busy building the temple for their god, Greece is inventing democracy and planting the seeds of empire.
What are you even doing with your life, Israelites?
They're like making math and science, like Pythagorean theorem and shit. And meanwhile, like the dudes are like, but God. And the Greeks are like, hey.
Right.
Under statesman Pericles, Athens becomes a democracy that thrives. Now, it's only for the free male citizens, but that's still a big deal. I mean, our democracy today still carries some of the elements of that original democracy.
Absolutely.
So it is to be praised. It's the first of its kind.
Right. Yeah.
Athens in particular becomes the cultural and intellectual hub of the ancient world during that time period.
As it would. I mean, you've solidified your spot in the world as a powerhouse and you are going to set the example.
Here's the thing. Greece did not go out to conquer those guys.
Right.
Greece merely said, fuck you for trying to conquer us.
Right.
So that's the difference. It wasn't that they wanted empire. They wanted to not be drawn into somebody else's empire.
Right.
That's what made them a strong force.
Sure.
Okay. Yep. The defense. Okay. So now I'm going to bounce around a little bit and give you what was happening with the philosophers and big actors in Greece at that time. Okay. And I will give each of them, I'll tell you how they fall into comparison of Zechariah's time frame. Okay.
Yeah.
So by this point, he's dead. Okay. Zechariah's dead. Okay. So we've got Hippocrates, known as the father of medicine. Okay. Yeah. He was doing his stuff roughly 50 years after Zechariah's time.
Okay. All right.
His work marks the shift from supernatural explanations of illness to natural observable causes, and represents how Greek thought was turning towards systematic, rational inquiry, which is a really good contrast with the prophetic worldview of the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
Because they were like, because God. And they're like, but why though? Could we just see that again, maybe? Could you do that in a lab?
Right. Yeah.
Could you repeat that experiment where we could all see it, maybe?
No, I that's the part about religion I don't really understand, right? Why are people okay with just not asking questions?
Yeah.
Like when someone tells you, don't worry about it, God's got it or whatever.
Yeah.
Why is that an okay answer?
Or why do you, and you being okay with it, like, why are you not okay with me not being okay with it? Like, I'm glad you find peace in your simplicity, but clearly I don't have the same fucking brain as you, and I can't be that simple.
Sure. Like, and not only that, like, you get angry when I question the simplicity of your idea.
Instead of just saying, I don't know, God, I don't fucking know.
Like, I just believe what I believe. I'm fine with that. You can believe what you believe, right? That would be awesome. But I'm allowed to question things.
Right.
I'm allowed to think for myself.
Like, I'm sorry you don't know the answer, but that doesn't make me an asshole for asking. Okay.
That's just it. It doesn't apply to anything else in the world except for religion, right?
Yeah.
If you were to ask something about, well, why is that the case? About something that was like pertinent to your safety or whatever, people wouldn't question why you're questioning.
Right.
But all of a sudden you question a dude who like makes people from thousands of years ago follow him around as a smoke cloud. And they're like, don't question God. And I'm like, why?
That's weird.
Why all of a sudden with this are we caring whether I question something or not?
Right. Oh, okay. So obviously the famous Hippocratic oath is attributed to Hippocrates.
Yeah.
Or his school. Maybe not him particularly, but it might have been his school.
Sure.
Okay. And it was probably only formalized a bit later.
Right.
So
the Hippocratic oath is what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay, that was Hippocrates. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we've got Herodotus, who is often called the father of history. So we just had the father of medicine. In the same century, we've got the father of history.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was writing around 60 years after Zechariah's time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he wrote his major work, Histories, and that covered the Greco-Persian Wars, the rise of the Persian Empire, and the various cultures he encountered, including Egyptians, Scythians, and Babylonians.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was like writing as things were happening. He was recording history in its time.
Which was a new phenomenon, kind of.
Yes. Right. And that's why he's called the father of history, because he was recording events as they occurred.
Right. And I would say probably, well, at least based on our experience through the Bible, it oftentimes was either a political rewriting or an embellishment that happened hundreds of years later.
And politically influenced.
Yeah, politically influenced. And most of the current writings were just journals or some type of a speech or something like that.
Yeah. So. Yeah. But this guy was like actually writing history. Right. And he's the father of history. So we've got the father of medicine. And then 10 years later, we've got the father of history. Same time period.
Very cool. Yeah.
Okay. We're not done. No, not even a little bit. We've got the Socratic method happening.
Oh.
Socrates, known for asking probing questions to expose contradictions. This was about 70 years after Zechariah.
Okay.
So you see, we're like every 10 years, we've got another like mastermind.
Right.
Just genius. Okay.
Yeah.
Socrates didn't actually write, but his student Plato preserved his teachings. And we'll get to that dude in a minute.
Yeah.
Socrates was executed by drinking hemlock in about 399 BCE.
Well, shit.
For allegedly corrupting the youth and impiety. Yeah.
Okay.
Corrupting the youth with logic.
I see.
Yeah.
So there was definitely not a large amount of acceptance for this at the time,
right?
At least in some levels.
We appreciate them better today than they did during their time,
obviously.
But still, yeah. So then, this dude Thucydides, roughly a generation after Herodotus, which is the father of history, and about 80 years after Zechariah, Thucydides is called the first modern historian.
Okay.
For his emphasis on cause and evidence as opposed to divine intervention.
Okay. Yeah.
So his major work, History of the Peloponnesian War, covered the conflict between Athens and Sparta as it was happening.
Really neat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
His work is much more analytical and less mythic than Herodotus even. So we've got the father of history, and then
he took those ideas and ran with them.
Generation later, we've got Thucydides as like, you know what? Let's take even more magic out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this stuff is just like, this is all the same century. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we've got Aristophanes, roughly 90 years after the Babylonian exile.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was the master of old comedies in Athens. So his plays give us a window into Athenian democracy, war weariness, gender roles, and how Greeks used humor as social and political commentary. He was like the Saturday Night Live of his time. And like that mixed with maybe like the Daily Show.
Okay.
But in togas.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's famous for sharp political satire, slapstick humor, bawdy jokes, and the following plays. He wrote The Clouds in 423 BCE, which mocked Socrates, who he was a contemporary with.
Okay.
Lysistrata in 411 BCE, which is the story where women go on a strike to stop war, which we've heard that story before.
Yeah.
And then the last one, The Frogs in 405 BCE, which is a parody-packed trip to the underworld. And I want to read it.
Interesting.
I've heard of the other two. I've not even heard of The Frogs.
Yeah, I
want to
either.
read this play.
Yeah.
Like, I need to read this play.
Right.
Okay. So he's a big deal. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So then we've got Plato. Okay. And he's roughly 100 years after Zechariah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a student of Socrates. He wrote his shit down.
Yeah.
And he recorded much of what we know about Socrates. He founded the academy, the first academy, like capital A, the academy.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first institution of higher learning in the Western world around 387 BCE.
Wow.
He made college.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Plato bridges transition from classical city-state era to the coming age of empire. He was a key figure in shaping Western philosophical and political thought. He wrote The Republic, which we've all heard of, very important piece.
Right.
And that piece explored justice, the ideal state, and the philosopher king around 375 BCE.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this fucking century.
It's a lot of shit going on.
Yeah. We've got the Parthenon was built atop the Acropolis of Athens, a marvel of architecture. It was built to honor Athena Parthenos, the city's patron goddess. And it symbolized Athenian power, culture, and devotion during a time of massive civic pride and artistic achievement.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it was an architecture marvel, but at the same time, it was about a goddess.
Yeah.
So they were still combining the two, but using all of their logic and stuff to try to make it work.
Right. They wove it into the whole fabric of what they were.
Mm-hmm. And that was about 80 to 100 years after Zechariah's prophetic activity.
Sure.
That's when the Parthenon was built.
It strikes me that, the ideas that permeated this time frame with the Grecians.
The
Greeks. Thank you. These ideas have pulled through time.
Mm-hmm.
Like democracy.
Yeah.
The Hippocratic Oath. These ideas
the math,
have all
sciences, philosophies,
permeated
histories,
modern societies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even across cultures, even.
Yeah.
And it just feels like this culture that is being formed that we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
maybe has more influence than God does.
Yeah.
Like God is only a certain group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And this has actually more influence worldwide than God does.
And that was terrifying for a group who could not get its shit together.
Right.
Yeah.
And if God's so powerful, why didn't he come up with these great ideas?
Exactly. That was very challenging. Okay, so last dude I'm going to mention is Aristotle. And also, I didn't even mention, there were so many other playwrights from this time that I could have mentioned. Thucydides is one of them.
Yeah, I think you missed some mathematicians and different things like that,
too.
So,
Pythagoras is one of the dudes from that time period. Yeah, there's so many. But the last one I'm going to mention is Aristotle.
Okay.
Yeah. He was a student of Plato. Okay. So Socrates taught Plato. Plato taught Aristotle.
Sure.
And then Aristotle taught at the Academy of Athens, and he taught Alexander the Great.
Oh, wow.
As a teenager.
Interesting.
Around 343 BCE.
Okay.
Yeah. So, these ideas are just getting passed down in this century.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
He founded his own school separate from the academy called the Lyceum in Athens around 335 BCE.
I've definitely heard of that. Yeah.
He made foundational contributions to and shaped Western thought in science, biology, metaphysics, logic, ethics, and politics.
Wow.
His work deeply influenced not only Greek and Roman intellectual traditions, but also Islamic, Jewish, and Christian medieval thought, making him one of the most important philosophers in world history.
Yeah.
This was about 150 years after the Babylonian exile.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, this is some steep competition for gods.
Yeah.
You know, like you've got all these big time thinkers with all these ideas and all these philosophies and ways of changing the world. Right. And instead, some cultures are still arguing over, you know, which fucking foods to eat and which clothes to wear.
On what day of the week.
Right.
Because which god will be
It just
happier.
makes it seem so fucking small. You know?
Exactly.
And I don't know how gods pulled through this, but it seems like it shouldn't have.
Yeah, no,
but,
totally.
You know, obviously they did.
Yeah.
So what do I know?
Womp womp.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So those were all happening. And I know that is past where we're currently at as we're reading the Bible.
Yeah.
But this was all brewing at the time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I feel like...
And it's not that far past.
It's not. It's not. And that's why I didn't mind going ahead even further a little bit.
We haven't even made it to Jesus yet.
No, I know. And I kind of wanted to get an idea what was happening in Greece in the lead up to Jesus.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So next we're going to talk about the 300 BCEs.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Very brief.
Yeah.
I have titled this one, Alexander is so fucking great.
Okay.
You know, because Alexander right?
Yes.
And he learned from Plato. So how could he not?
He did.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, was it Plato?
That's right. I think you got it. It was Aristotle, I thought.
Yeah, Aristotle. My bad. Yeah, Aristotle.
Yeah.
Aristotle learned from Plato. Sorry, skipped the dude. All right. So in 431 to 404 BCE, we've got the Peloponnesian War. That was a super long, brutal conflict between Athens and Sparta.
Okay.
And that sucks.
Yeah.
Because Sparta eventually won, but the entire war weakened all of Greece.
Well, sure. It's an internal conflict, you know, like that's not going to be good.
Internal conflicts are bad, as we Americans know. This paved the way for the Macedonian dominance coming. Okay.
Okay. All right.
In 359 to 336-ish BCE, we get Philip II of Macedon.
Okay.
That's his reign.
Got it.
Okay. He united most of Greece under Macedonian rule through diplomacy, warfare, and strategic marriages.
Got it.
His rise marks the end of the independent Greek city-states and the beginning of the pan-Hellenic imperial ambitions, which is a huge shift in Greek and world history.
Yeah.
Okay, so the golden age is over.
Right.
But the ideas cannot be killed, obviously.
Sure.
And so now Philip is ruling this really smart place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude planned to invade the Persian Empire, but was assassinated in 336 BCE just before he could launch the campaign.
Oh, damn.
And we kind of have talked about this before when we did a special episode over Alexander the Great because the Jews revered him.
Yeah.
Do you recall that?
Somewhat,
it was
yeah.
When we were doing like from the stories and tales.
Yeah.
Jewish stories and tales and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. So his son, though, in 334 to 331 BCE, Philip's son is Alexander the Great.
Okay.
And he took up the Persian conquest after daddy's death.
Got it.
Okay. So
and obviously, because of, you know, who we know more, he must have done a better job.
He did. He conquered most of the known world at that time.
Sure.
Persia, Egypt, parts of India. I mean,
wow.
Yeah. That's why they call him
I've looked at
Great.
his track before, like where he all went in the world to do his conquering. I'm like, you don't even have vehicles, and you were all over the fucking place.
He was pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, how could he not be, though? He was raised on Greek ideas.
Right. Well, and I think more importantly than that, like he was a conqueror, but people, like you said, like the Israelites revered him. Like he was
Because
oftentimes not a horrible conqueror.
He was less a conqueror and more a historian and a culture gatherer.
Right. And that's not to take away from the fact that he was still spreading war and killing people.
He was, but he was also spreading ideas.
Sure.
And it's thanks to him that so many ideas prevailed throughout history.
No, absolutely.
So this ended the Persian rule over Judah.
Okay.
So no more Persian rule over Judah. Yay! Judah's free, I guess.
Right.
So Judea becomes part of the Greek world at this point.
Okay.
Because that, Alexander the Great is in charge now.
Yeah, and you're not going to fight that dude.
Nope. So Alexander spreads Hellenistic culture all over the fucking place, including Jerusalem, and he blends Greek with Persian, Egyptian, and Indian influences.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he's got like the best of all possible worlds, like everything cool and smart and pretty and yummy.
Take a little bit from here, a little bit from there.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's good.
He's tossing all of these cultures and ideas all over the place, mixing them because, that's what he wants.
Right.
He doesn't want to rule the world. He wants to have everybody combined.
But I thought everybody wants to rule the world.
No, that's a song. So this explains how Greek ideas, language, culture, and philosophy later flood into Jewish and Christian thought.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and we're going to talk about that in just a second.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the last thing I'm going to say about the 300s is in 323 BCE, thereabouts.
Yeah.
Alexander dies and his generals fight over the empire, which gets divided.
Okay.
And that's when we've got the Greek side versus the Roman side.
Okay.
Seleucid Empire eventually rules Judah from Syria, and the Ptolemaic Empire rules Egypt and sometimes Judah. Go back and forth. Dappled horses, remember?
Yeah.
So this sets the stage for the Maccabees that we're going to read about, and Hanukkah a couple centuries later.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's setting the stage for what's to come.
Sure.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about the 200s, and this is I'm pretty much wrapping toward the end because the 200s is when the Septuagint was written.
Oh, okay.
So the Septuagint's not even around yet.
Right.
I was like, wait, it put it in context for me. It placed it.
Yeah.
It put a pin in the timeline.
Well, because in our time frame, right now, it gets referenced in the same light when they're talking about things from the older Bible, like the older Old Testament, sections.
Yeah.
But it wasn't actually even written until much later.
Yeah.
So.
It had not been translated into Greek yet.
Right.
Okay. So the Septuagint is first created or translated in Alexandria, Egypt in about 250 BCE.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was commissioned for the large Jewish diaspora in Egypt who spoke Koine Greek, not Hebrew.
Okay. Yeah.
So the Jews that were dispersed. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tradition claims that over 7 Jewish scholars translated the Torah, which was Genesis through Deuteronomy. So just the Pentateuch, just those first 5 books.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That 7 Jewish scholars translated this for the Library of Alexandria. And that's why it's called the Septuagint, because that is Latin for 70.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's a thing. Okay. Oh, I said 7, but I meant 70.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry. It's 70, not, I left a 0 out. Sorry.
70 people.
Yeah. 70.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was aimed to preserve Jewish scripture for Greek-speaking Jews and to integrate it into the wider Hellenistic world.
Sure.
The version was used by early Christians, including the writers of the New Testament, who quoted that even more than the Hebrew version.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Which, remember, we talked about this a little bit, how back then they preferred to use the Septuagint, but then later on, they rejected that and started using the other one, the Latin one.
There's been translation issues for, as long as they can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Which can't muddle things at all,
Okay, so they used, they used the Septuagint because that's the language that they were speaking at the time, right?
Right.
But they rejected it later because of what I'm about to get into.
Okay. Yeah.
This shows how the Greek and Jewish cultures were blending during the Hellenistic period after Alexander the Great's conquest, and it marks a shift in Jewish identity. They were no longer just temple and Torah, but diaspora, language, and philosophy.
Okay.
Because it was translated in Alexandria, some Greek philosophical ideas inevitably seeped in through language choice, conceptual framing, and interpretation.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why later they were like, oh, remember how we were using that because that's the language we spoke? But this other translation, the Latin one, actually is more accurate. So anyway, fuck the Greek one.
Accurate is such a weird word.
It is.
When you're talking about, things that didn't actually happen in the first place.
But let me give you some examples here of why they rejected it.
Okay.
Later. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting into the rejection thereof. Like that comes way later.
Sure.
Okay. I'm just telling you why eventually they do decide to do that. Okay. Translators often chose Greek philosophical terms that carried broader conceptual meaning than the original Hebrew. For example, the Hebrew word for wisdom becomes Sophia, which in Greek philosophy, especially Platonism, Plato, it's not just knowledge, but divine reason, cosmic order, truth. Like the word has much more, it's less flat.
Yeah.
It has much more broad understanding, breadth,
Yeah.
Okay. Another example, the Hebrew word for word is often translated using logos, which is a very loaded Greek term meaning reason, logic, divine ordering principle, which is later central to Stoic philosophy and is even used in the Gospel of John. Okay. So the word choice even was like lending to more, they're trying to make it a little bit more sciencey and believably.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So the Septuagint sometimes shows a move toward abstraction aligning with Platonism. God is described in more philosophical, less anthropomorphic ways than in the Hebrew original.
Okay.
And the Hebrew Bible is very the Hebrew Bible's very earthy, personal God, like walking, regretting, those kind of things.
Right.
It's softened in the Septuagint, where God appears more eternal, immutable, immovable, unchangeable, and transcendent. Closer to Plato's, quote, form of the good, or Aristotle's unmoved mover.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's an argument.
Yeah, right? That is definitely an argument. So you can see why word choice is going to change your thought process, and that matters.
Yeah.
And so later on, Christians were like, I don't know about all that.
Right.
I think
we liked our old God.
Yeah, we like our fire and brimstone. This guy is a little too over there, and we can't interact with him as much.
But as you were going down that list, there's a lot of things in there that I could pick out kind of on a broader sense of what Christianity is today. Mm-hmm. And I could say that some of those ideas still get cherry picked out of that to be used.
Definitely.
And which is saying, I don't know. There is no right answer when it comes to religion. So,
or translation.
Yeah, because it's not true. It's merely
You're taking fairy tale beliefs that have been lost in time and translated into the ideas of different peoples and the way their thought processes worked at that time, and then redone again.
Sure. And with as many different versions of religion there are today, and even within those religions, the differing ideas amongst the people that believe that religion, these are very much, whatever you like about that religion, you just make that happen.
Exactly.
I like that bit. Ooh, that one's good.
Yeah. Like religion today is more like a spiritual buffet.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate.
As we like to say in the atheist community, cherry picking.
Yeah.
And it's true. They're because there's so much confusion over which translation, what the actual translations mean, the different cultures that they belong to. There is, even within this, fictional story about God, there are so many different ways to interpret that. And that doesn't help their cause. because it's so fractured. It's so fractured, and there's not a right answer, which we've talked about many times. Like, why hasn't God come down and clarified?
Right.
Because if there is one answer, why hasn't this been touched for as long as it's not been touched? Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
God should clarify
to
somebody.
Totally agree.
If he were real, which he's not.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, I lost my place. Hold on. Okay. So Proverbs and wisdom literature, especially like the wisdom of Solomon, which is part of the Deuterocanonical or apocryphal book.
Yeah.
Like not in the actual Bible.
Okay.
These sound a lot like Stoic or Platonic teachings. Okay. The soul's development, self-control, moderation, wisdom, the righteous path leading to a eternal reward, and the fool's path leads to ruin.
Got it.
So we're talking about the basics of good versus evil and ethics.
Right.
Yeah. Like being a good person puts you on a good path and what it means to be a good person.
Yeah.
So those are very Greek thoughts.
Yeah.
But
again, those have permeated modern thinking into the religion too.
Greek thought emphasized universal truths over tribal or national identities, which I appreciated that statement.
Sure.
The Septuagint subtly shifts from ethnocentric God of Israel language to a more universal God of all. And that prepared the way for the spread of Judaism and Christianity in the Gentile world.
Okay.
This fits Hellenistic ideals of a world community governed by divine reason or law and sets the stage for the rise of Christianity, which would build even more heavily on this fusion of Jewish ideas being translated literally and conceptually into the Greco-Roman world.
So this was like essentially Christianity maybe was a bit of a compromise for this new power in the world.
Kind of.
At some level. Because it was influenced heavily by it, so there was some give and some going back afterwards too. Like we want the old days type stuff. But I mean, it definitely had a strong influence on the fact that it was coming about at that point.
Yeah. So now we're leaving the 200s, and I only have a couple more points to make because we're so far removed.
Yeah.
Like we're approaching that zero Jesus line.
Yeah. Right.
In 198 BCE, that's when the Seleucids took control of Judea.
Okay.
Okay. So that's like Greeky.
Okay. Sure.
167 to 160 BCE, that's the Maccabean revolt. The Jews rebel against Hellenistic oppression, and we get the story of Hanukkah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in 63 BCE, that's when Rome enters the chat.
Okay.
Okay. The Roman general Pompey conquers Jerusalem. Greek rule fades. The Roman Empire begins. And centers of learning shift to places like Alexandria in Egypt, where the famous library stood.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to end it there because that's Rome. And I don't want to talk about the Roman Empire.
We don't want to talk about Rome.
No.
What happens in Rome stays in Rome.
Well, today is about Greece, baby. Because that 100-year period, just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
We've heard of all of these philosophers and mathematicians and playwrights and stuff. Like, we've heard of them, but it made better sense that they were scattered throughout time. And like, I had no kind of conception of where they were. They were all in the same 100-year period.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is. I mean, that was an amazing thing that happened in world history. I mean, that's why it stands apart from so much else, Mm-hmm. And obviously it has influenced even the Bible, and it's influenced religion. It's influenced all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the transition from, the Old Testament to the New Testament and Christianity, this happened in that world, so that it's very relevant to what we talk about.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that we'll talk about it again.
Oh, I'm sure. That's why, even though, again, this is past where we are in the Bible, it still gives us an idea of where we're headed.
Sure.
And why we're headed there.
It's not entirely past where we are in the Bible. We have touched on the Maccabean revolt before. There are sections that we've read earlier that do go into this time frame at some level.
Sure.
So, and there are some stuff that's adjacent to the Bible that we might get into between the Old Testament and the New Testament that will cover some of this too.
Yeah.
So it is relevant, and it does set the stage for where we're going to be transitioning to soon.
Yes.
And I think that's why we felt it was important to cover this.
Yeah, I was really excited. I was like, what do you think? I'm going to do Greece, baby. And you were like, what do you mean? And then I told you, and you were like, are you going to make it relevant? And I was like, yes, obviously.
You make me sound like an asshole.
Well, you are.
But, okay.
But that's okay, because I'm a dum-dum. I'm a potato head. You're an asshole. I'm a potato head. And together the two, I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, I don't either.
I love you, though.
Yeah, I love you, too.
See?
So, I think that's all we got today, right?
I'm done.
You're done?
Yeah.
We got to go get some food at my mom's.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Like, I always feel weird saying happy
it's not
Memorial Day. Because it's not happy.
Right. It is Memorial Day. We're going to go get some food because it's a long weekend. And
it is our anniversary.
It is our anniversary, too. Yeah. Well, we call it tomorrow, but yeah. And we think it's 18 years. We always argue about this because we got married twice.
You say argue like...
No, it's not an argument at all.
We're not arguing with each other.
Fuck. We're like,
we don't remember.
Somewhere between 16 and 19. We don't know.
Right.
We've been together for a long fucking time.
It's definitely less than 20 and more than 15.
That much we know for sure.
This much I know is true. I love you.
That's right. We did look it up. We've looked it up a couple of times, but we're so used to like not giving a fuck about which actual year it was.
And I'm terrible with numbers anyway.
You are. That we just don't care.
Yeah.
So it doesn't in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter?
It doesn't impact us. No. Right. Yeah. I mean, I love you whether it's 17 or 19.
Yeah. And we don't get ourselves the ascribed gifts for the years.
Yeah, no.
Because that's
a waste of money for us. Like, I don't want a token, like, check the box item.
Yeah.
Like, I want, like, when you bring me a present.
You're like, why didn't they just make chocolate the thing for every year?
No, well, here's the thing. Like,
maybe throw in a wine.
When you and Kid go shopping for, like, Mother's Day, you guys come back with stuff that, like, you know that I like. And none of it is standard fare.
Right.
None of it matches. Like,
you like trinkets.
I love trinkets and chocolates and toys and things that make you smile.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And wine. Lots of wine.
Speaking of which, we need to go get some of that stuff.
I'm going to go get some wine at your mom's house.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us, everybody. Sorry to cut up your bye. This was our first live Sunday podcast on Discord. Mm-hmm. As always, there will be a link in the show notes. It happens at 2 p.m. Eastern once a month. You can get onto the Discord channel and you can actually get a reminder sent to you if you link into the event. And then we'd love to see you here. You know, we're trying to do a different time frame to help some people that can't normally get into our live events. So
the one on Tuesday. The one on
Tuesdays
at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah,
and that's every Tuesday.
Right. We have a pretty fairly regular crowd for that one, but we'd love to build up the Sunday one because we've got friends that we miss, and that's kind of why we started this because they can't make those 10 p.m. Eastern ones. Yeah. So, but we're done.
We're done.
Bye.
It's Greece, baby.
Hey, wife, I guess that's the end?
But husband, that's just sad.
It doesn't have to be. We are on lots of social media platforms like Twitter. Our handle there is sacrilegious_D.
For D's nuts.
Oh my God. Stop doing that. Anyway, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. There's a link to all of our social media sites at our website.
Ooh, we have a website?
Yeah, it's sacrilegiousdiscourse.com, where you can also find a link to our merch shop.
We have a merch shop?
Yep. We have podcast-themed clothing, mugs, notebooks, and more, as well as an atheist and science-themed products.
Wow, our fans should really go check that out right now.
Definitely. They can get in touch with us by sending an email to sacrilegiousdiscourse@gmail.com. But before they do that, we could really use some help.
Oh yeah? With what?
Well, it's not free running the podcast, and we need some financial support in order to get better equipment, which will free up time so we can concentrate on our podcast and our fans.
Okay, so what should they do?
Head over to patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse and sign up as a contributor on our podcast. Supporters there receive additional bi-weekly episodes that we record just for our Patreon members for as little as $2 a month.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using.
And Apple Podcast reviews help us out tremendously.
Like and subscribe. Leave an Apple review. Join us on Twitter. Support us on Patreon. That's a lot of instructions. Don't forget to say thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.